Hi, I'm Chris Lee at the Southeastern 14 today, here to give you power rankings of SEC football teams through 3 weeks of play. And let's start at the top. Alabama and Georgia 1 and 2. Really not a lot of need to discuss those teams because they are what they are. They are everybody's number 1 and number 2. They have been pretty dominant at times, although Alabama struggled with Florida. We'll get into that in just a minute. But anyway, 1 and 2 have remained unchanged for a few weeks, and I think you could see that for a bit. Now, 3, 4, and 5 are where it starts to get interesting for me, and really maybe 6 and 7 too. I've got in this order Ole Miss, Florida, and Texas A&M, and people may particularly have an issue with A&M, and let me just be honest. I try to watch a lot of SEC football, and sometimes it leads you to biases because I made an intentional effort to watch more of the Aggies last week, and so I probably saw more of Texas A&M's flaws than I would have seen with some other teams, but I didn't like what they got out of their offense. And frankly, starting on their offensive line, I think A&M got pushed around a lot of times by New Mexico, and those are just words that you don't need to hear happen. You saw Coach Jimbo Fisher chewing out quarterback Calcada for a lot of the day. I didn't like that. I don't know what he was displeased about, but A&M's offense right now has got me concerned. And you go back a week to to Colorado, and frankly, the performance in that game was not good, and Colorado was not good this weekend too. And so I think now that we've got a little bit of context, that is why I dropped A&M a couple of spots this week, or actually one spot. Okay, I've got Ole Miss at 3, and you could just as easily put Florida at 3. And again, we're going to know soon enough with some of these teams as they get into the meat of the conference schedule. But I really like Ole Miss. The defense isn't great, but it's better. The offense is playing at just an elite level. Matt Corral, now maybe the Heisman front runner. I just like what Ole Miss has been able to do on offense. I think we'll get a better idea of what the Rebels are as the schedule gets tougher. But for now, I've got Ole Miss 3. And I've got Florida 4. And frankly, I liked some things I saw on offense and on defense with the Gators. I thought that they really were good in the trenches against Alabama. That's a great litmus test because if you can hang in the trenches with Alabama, you can hang with anybody. And so I like that about the Gators. Number 6, I've got Arkansas. And frankly, I debated putting Arkansas ahead of A&M. I just couldn't bring myself to drop A&M to 6 spots when you've still got some people that have got him that high in the national rankings. In other words, being 6th in your conference, but being higher in some national rankings or close to it, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. I'm going to really respect the work that some others have done and also respect the talent that Jimbo Fisher has put in. But I'll tell you what, that one's going to be decided this weekend in Jerry's world. I have a sneaking suspicion that Arkansas could pull an upset. I don't know how I feel about that yet. But the Razorbacks and A&M, that one will either stay the same or it will flip after this week. I've got Auburn 7, LSU 8. Auburn, to me, I don't know that I think much differently of the Tigers after their performance in Happy Valley. Penn State is maybe a top 5, potentially college football playoff team. You had 100,000 people in the stands. That crowd was jazzed. I'm not going to really dock Auburn for losing to Penn State, but I think we still got some questions about the Tigers. They've not beaten anybody any good yet, and so I'm going to kind of hold Auburn on that middle ground until we get to know some more. LSU I've moved up to 8, and it's not so much because I liked LSU the last couple of weeks. I thought they were fine last week against Central Michigan, which took Missouri into the fourth quarter 2 weeks ago. But I didn't like the way Kentucky, Mississippi State, Missouri played. So to me, I've got LSU in that spot based on talent. Then I go in order: Kentucky, Mississippi State, Missouri. To me, that's probably the next tier, although Tennessee might have an argument. I'll get into the Vols in just a minute. I've been big on Kentucky all year, and I've liked what I have seen. I've watched Kentucky play a lot, but the concern always in the back of your head is, who are they doing this against? And Kentucky ran into UT Chattanooga last week, which is not a good FCS team, and looked horrible. And I'm not going to dock Kentucky for the rest of the season on that one game, but given that the Cats really I've got some questions, I think. I want to know how they produce offensively against a good defense. I think Missouri, the way that it responded with its game last week, really cast a little bit of a cloud on that win over Missouri that Kentucky had. So I've gotten Kentucky at 9 with kind of a bullet. I could easily move Kentucky back up a couple of spots. I like the team. I like the job that Mark Stoops has done. But this is the SEC. It is a great league. It is brutal competition. And if you slip a little bit one week in your performance, you may slip a couple of spots in the rankings. And so really that's what happened there. 10, I've got Mississippi State, which lost a tough luck game to Memphis. You can argue that call on the punt return cost them the game. But look, State also got a little bit fortunate to beat Louisiana Tech in week 1. That's a team that's a good team. I don't think it's a great team. Missouri, I really like the Tigers after week 1. Going back and looking at it now, probably put too much stock into a win over Central Michigan. Missouri's defense has been awful. I want to see that get better. At 12, I've got Tennessee, and I'm really interested to see how Tennessee plays Florida this weekend. I think Josh Heupel is an offensive-minded coach. We've really, though, seen the Vols better work on defense, and maybe that's the schedule. And you go back and look a couple of weeks ago, Pitt really picked Tennessee apart in the passing game. And so I'm concerned about that, especially heading into Gainesville this week. But I think the Vols have played really good football so far. I can't put them above 12 yet because I still want to see Tennessee prove something. And I could have debated flipping Missouri and Tennessee this week. I think that'll settle in the coming weeks. But I thought that the separation maybe between the Vols and Missouri isn't huge right now. Last two teams, I've got South Carolina, which just was overmatched at Georgia this weekend. And I've got Vanderbilt, which is overmatched against most everybody right now. The Commodores and Clark Lee have got a really long rebuilding process. Anyway, check our content out at southeastern14.com. We have dropped a 1 to 130 power ranking of NCAA football teams this week. And that's interesting. That's not our ranking, but I've taken a composite of about 4 computer polls and 4 human rankings, combine those into one composite ranking just to kind of give you an idea of what the folks across the country think of every team. So check that out. We'll have our offense and defensive player rankings later this week. We rank the top 14 offensive and the top 14 defensive players every week. Again, it is early. Those rankings are going to vary, I think, a lot going through the season, but it's fun to do. It gives people things to talk about, and that's what we're here for. By the way, check out our podcast feed. I had a really good episode with Nick De La Torre, who covers Florida today. We had some good insights on the Gators, and we also had some good insights on the SEC. Anyway, we will have more videos coming later this week. I'm Chris Lee, the publisher, the host of the 14 podcast. Thank you for watching our YouTube video today, and please check back for more content at our site, especially as we get into previewing Week 4 SEC games.